Hello everyone, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club and welcome to my channel. Tonight we're going to be doing a Let's Play video featuring Global War, World War II Worldwide 1939 to 1945. The game is produced by White Dog Games and designed by Ben Madison. This is going to be a Let's Play video, so I won't be featuring any of the setup, or we won't dive too deeply into the rules. We're going to play through and see how we do. If you'd like to watch a video where I go through the setup and play a sample turn explaining the rules, I'll feature that up in the corner screen, and you can click on that to view that before you come back and watch this playthrough. We begin with our chit draw phase. We're going to draw one of the three green tokens, place that on the fall 1939 turn 1 calendar spot. And here's our draw. All right, we've picked tile number 2. We're going to have 7 attacks on front A, 1 attack on front D. Our next step is the evening telegraph phase. We're going to roll a die and add the current turn marker and resolve the military events, political events, and if there's any commandos. Rolls a 1, we add 1 to that, and that's 2. And there will be no military events, and Finland is going to become active. We'll read about that. And that event reads, if the Finnish tile is on its Velaruha side, flip to the Mannerheim, which hurts Russia, front B, with its -1 DRM. You can attack it while B is neutral, which would represent the Winter War. So, Finland has aligned itself with the Axis powers. And now we move on to the Axis powers attack phase. We're going to deploy Axis armies on the board indicated by the turn chit. Now, in this case, we're going to have 7 attacks on front A in the Western Front and 1 attack on front D. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use these counting chips to keep track of the number of attacks that the Axis have, and then I won't be out of sequence. So our first decision now is, do we want to support the Poles? They're going to get a total of 7 attacks here. The Poles will cost us 1 point to support, and then that's going to force the Axis to make a die roll to get rid of that formation. In this case, Polish army has a strength of 3, so the Axis will have to roll a 4 or greater. So I think we are going to prop the Poles, at least for the moment. So that's going to cost us $1 million. We'll move that down from 8 down to 7 on our omnibus tracker, and we'll force the Axis to roll a die. So the Axis are going to spend one of their attacks, and they'll roll a die. They need a 4 or greater to take that first formation out. The roll is a 2, so the Poles have hung on. And I think we're going to spend another $1, and we're going to force the Axis to continue using their attacks to try to get rid of the Polish army. Here's the roll. This is their second attack now. And that time the Poles are defeated. So the counter is flipped, and the remnants of the Polish army are left. And unfortunately, it only has a strength of 2. That's going to only give us a 1 in 3 chance here of being successful. So we're going to let Poland go. The Axis will spend another attack, and the Polish army is no more, and Germany has conquered Poland. The Danes are up next. They're their next target. It would cost us $1 to support them. We only have a 1 in 6 chance of success, so we're going to let Denmark go. That'll spend an Axis attack, and now Norway is up. And I think we're going to try to support the Norwegians. So we're going to spend another $1 million. That'll put us down to 5, and that'll force an Axis attack roll. We'll have them spend one of their attacks, and we'll roll the die. And the Norwegians are successful. They're causing trouble for the Axis attack on Norway. I think we'll spend 1 more. We're down to 4 million, and we'll force the Axis into another attack. And they're successful. So the stout Norwegians are putting up a good defense. I don't know if we want to spend any more supporting them, so I think we're going to let Norway go. That'll spend the final Axis attack, and Norway's been conquered. And now we move on to Holland. All right, that's going to complete the Axis attacks on the Western Front. Now we have one attack on Front D, and that's on the Chinese theater in the Far East. Now this is going to work somewhat differently. There are no prop units in the Chinese theater at the moment. So what happens is for each attack that would be coming into that theater, the Axis are going to place one unit from their force display, the highest valued unit in that display, on the board. So there are two units in box D, and the highest value of those they're both 2. So I think Japanese will place the Wang army in the Chinese theater. So we'll place that army into the theater, and we never want those to get anywhere near 5. Once we get to 5, another placement would put that into a blitz situation, and that's where we start losing the game. Our cities will start moving from high morale to low morale. Next up is our economic warfare phase. And what's going to happen here is we're going to attempt to outwit the Axis by placing our convoy units on these circle spaces around the board. And that's going to try to generate us revenue based upon the number that's in that box. Now, there are certain probabilities, and we'll take a look at the German U-boats table, and that would show you the probabilities of where these Axis forces are going to deploy to. Currently, the Axis have 2 units in the U-boats box. They have a U-boat, and they have the surface raider, Admiral Graf Spee. So looking at the 2 column, we note that on a roll of 7, both units are going to deploy to the number 4 box, and whenever 2 units deploy to that location, we have a potential that the convoy will be sunk by them. So this kind of tells us the probabilities of what might happen. There's also another chance that on a roll of 11, 2A box, the North Sea area, would also be focused on both units going there. So we might want to avoid those so that we don't lose any of our convoys. I think we're going to deploy the British convoy to the 2B box, and the French convoy we're going to deploy to the 2C box. Now we're going to roll 2 dice, and we'll be using the 2 U-boats column, and we'll find out where these U-boats and surface raiders are going to deploy to. Okay, here is the roll. We've rolled a 3. And that means that the U-boats and surface raiders will deploy to Zone 4 and Zone 2B. Surface raiders always deploy to the highest value box. So the Graf Spee is going to go into the 4 box, and the U-boats will go into the 2B box. So the Axis have outwitted us in the 2B box. That's going to cancel out our convoy. We won't generate any income from that. But the French convoy is successful in operating in the South Pacific area, and that's going to earn us a total of 2 revenue. So that'll increase our millions of dollars from 4 up to 6. Our next big decision is to decide whether we want to use our Lend-Lease tokens. We have 3 tokens. There's Jeeps and Trucks that would give us immediately a $3 increase in our millions of dollars marker. Liberty ships would place 2 U.S. convoys in the East Coast box, and we'd be able to build those, and that would definitely be a positive in our economic production. No doubt about that. The third one would be the destroyer deal. We would remove a carrier from the cup, and then based upon that result, we would move a U-boat to the calendar a number of turns ahead equal to the carrier strength. So this is a tough decision. Now when we use these Lend-Lease tokens, that moves the Roosevelt marker down the track, and that would directly affect his ability to be reelected in the 1940 election. You have to remember that in the late 30s, U.S. was still in a depression, and very largely the U.S. population had a position where they had an isolationist position. They didn't want to be involved in European or Asian wars. So this will directly affect Roosevelt's ability to be reelected. But I think we can risk one of these. And to me, it appears that we have to decide between Liberty ships and Jeeps and trucks. I think we've got enough capital for what we want to do. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to select the Liberty ships token. That's going to provide us with 2 convoy markers that we can place into the box, and we can purchase those for $2 a piece. So I think we'll do that. And that action is going to move the Roosevelt marker down 1. So now what this means is during the 1940 election, we're going to roll a die. If it comes up by 5 or 6, Roosevelt will lose the re-election and we'll have Wendell Willkie. So I think that's probably a good decision on our part. We can probably risk 1 use of the Lend-Lease prior to the election. Now we have the opportunity to use Stalin, and I think we're going to use him, and he has several options that he can perform. One of them is shock armies. He can make an attack versus an army, or Finland, Sinking, or Caucasus, even if neutral. He gets to roll 2 dice, and we get to use the highest roll. So I think we're going to use that in the Winter War against Mannerheim. So we're going to roll 2d6, and we're looking for a 5 or 6 to be successful. And he's got it. Stalin has won the Winter War. That's going to flip Mannerheim over to the Valeruha side. And now we're going to move on to the UN attack phase, and this is our ability to strike back at the Axis. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to use our U.S. aid to China. We have a buildup of 5 points there in reserve, and those can be used to aid Chiang Kai-shek's forces against the Japanese in China. So I think we're going to spend 1 of those U.S. aid to China points, and we're going to make an attack in the Chinese theater. We'll target the Wang army. We need a result of greater than 2. There's no modifier. And we've done it. We've got a 6, and that's going to send the Wang army back to the force display in the China theater. And we can continue making these attacks. We can switch around the board. The only active theaters are in China and on the Western Front. There's nothing we can do on the Western Front. There are no Axis armies deployed there. So I think we'll do another attack, moving the U.S. aid to China marker down 1 more, and we'll attack the NCAA army. We need a 4 or greater. And we've done it. So that army is sent back to the display. And we've kind of stabilized that Chinese theater. Now there are 2 armies. One is the Manchukuo capital, which we cannot attack. But we could make 1 more attack against that CCAA army. And I think we'll do that. We'll spend 1 more aid to China, and we'll make the roll. We need a 4 or greater. And we failed. I think we'll keep those in reserve for right now. And I think that's all of the attacks we're going to make. Now there is one other attack we can make, and that would be to send the Royal Navy to hunt down the German raider Admiral Graf Spee. So I think we'll do that. I'm going to spend $1 million, and we'll make a roll. We need a 4 or greater for this. And we've done it. So we have successfully hunted down the Graf Spee, and that is no more. That's great. Now we move on to the industrial phase where we can build things. And I think what we're going to do, we have a total of $5 million. We're going to purchase one of the convoys that were recently deployed, and we'll pay the $2 million, and we will deploy that convoy to the available convoys box. We can do 1 of those per turn. We have a total of $3 million left in our treasury, and there's a few other things that we're able to do. We can build what's known as Rick's Cafe, and that would give us a benefit in the French North Africa box. That would cost us $1 million. Another option is to reinforce Malta. Malta is a very important location for the Allies in the Mediterranean front. Right now it's besieged. Just means that it hasn't been fully supplied. It's not really besieged yet. So we could spend $2 million and that would make Malta fully capable. I think at this point we're going to take a more conservative approach and we're going to save and bank that $3 million that we have. And now we're going to move on to the turn end phase. And what we do here is we're going to do our naval reset. All of the forces on the board will go back to their boxes. And our Allied banking will be $3 million. We'll leave that on the track. And that completes the first turn of global war. We'll continue on with early 1940. All right, we're going to start our early 1940 turn. We'll draw a green chit. I'm planning on playing enough turns of this so that I can show the viewers the Pacific Theater operations, which happened after the Pearl Harbor attack. And I'm not sure how many turns we're going to play, but probably won't be the entire game. It's 27 turns, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, here is our token that we drew. We drew token number 3. We're going to have 7 activations on front A and 1 activation on front C. And we'll check for calendar events, and that is Victory at Sea number 2. Consulting 5.3.3, Victory at Sea, in the rulebook, we read, move the Norwegian convoy from the Norway box to the available convoys box. And that is going to be a help for us. And we find out from the text box that it says in 1939, Norway had the 4th largest merchant fleet in the world. Nearly all of it went to the British control after Hitler attacked Norway in 1940. Reputedly the world's most modern fleet of tankers, the Norwegians were vital to freedom's survival in 1940 versus the Nazi onslaught in the Battle of Britain. So that's going to be a help to us. So we're going to move this Norwegian convoys marker to our convoy box. That's going to give us 4 convoys. And so we'll place that 4th convoy into the convoy box. That's great. And now we'll be consulting our evening telegraph and we'll see what's happening around the world. We'll make a die roll and add the turn track number, which is now number 2. Here is the roll. We rolled a 4, it's modified to a 6, and we find out we have quislings. Let's read about that. And consulting the rulebook, it says, collaborators aid German offensives facing prop armies. Add an extra A attack if France started the turn unsurrendered. And an extra B attack if this is the Barbarossa turn. Otherwise, the event has no effect. So we're going to have 8 attacks on the Western Front, thanks to quislings. All right. Well, we have a total of $3 million in our treasury. And first up on the attack list for the Axis powers attack is going to be Holland, the Netherlands. And I don't think we're going to prop that. Would cost us $1 million, and we'd only have 2 strength on that army. So I think we're going to let that go. That'll be using one of the Axis attacks. They've got 8 of them now, and that will flip to Belgium. And I think we're going to try to prop the Belgians. So we will move our millions of dollars down 1 to 2, and we'll force the Axis into using a die roll. Remove one of their attacks, and they need a 4 or greater. And they failed. All right, well, I think we'll hold off and not prop the Belgians again. It's going to take Belgium out, revealing France. We'll use up another Axis attack. And now the French army is up next. 2 French armies. And we can prop them for $1. And I think we will we'll do that. We'll spend $1 and we'll try to prop the French. This will be the 4th Axis attack. And they need a 5 or 6. And they failed. Well, we're going to keep $1 in reserve, so we can't help France anymore, so they're going to end up falling. They're going to use another Axis attack, flipping the army, and now we're at Paris. It would cost us $2 to support that unit. We can't, so the Axis are going to launch an attack, and France is going to fall. Germany has conquered France in 6 weeks. All right, we're going to go through this procedure for after France falls. The Axis still have 2 attacks on the Western Front. First step when France falls is we deploy the Goering capital unit to Front A. And the rules state after the fall of France, the Germans attack on Front A in the form of aircraft. Bombers for game purposes, the Bf-109, not armies. There are no ground combat on Front A until the Allies hit the beaches at Normandy a few years later. For many turns, you will fight the Battle of Britain and the air supremacy war in the West. But the game uses the same rules for this struggle in the air as it does for ground. All right. Step number 2, it says the fall of France activates fascist Italy on Front C. So, it says C 6.1.2 for the Italy procedure. That reads, Mussolini stands on his balcony and declares war on the Allies. Italy joins the Axis. Remove the Italy neutral tile from Front C. C is now active. The war is on in Libya and Egypt. Deploy the AOI army in Italian East Africa with its -1 DRM, which is going to hurt you on fronts C and E. Put the Yugoslav Nejic prop army in the Balkans. It distracts the Axis starting this turn. All right. So the Italy neutral token is removed, and we're going to place the Italian AOI army in Italian East Africa. And it's a pretty powerful 5-strength army, so it's going to take a little effort to get rid of that. And we're going to place the Nejic prop army in the Balkans. All right. Next step in the fall of France is the Vichy colonies. Deploy the Vichy Syria army in the Near East. So we will do that. Now that's not going to give the die roll modifiers yet. That only when it is going to be the German side of that Syrian counter. And then we're going to place the Vichy Malagasy army in Madagascar. Once again, that will not start adding die roll modifiers until it becomes Japanese support unit. So we want to try to get rid of those before they can cause a problem for us. Number 4, it says after the fall of France, the Germans are cleared to start Operation Barbarossa on a future turn. Number 5, flip the French convoy tile to its German U-boat side and add it on the next calendar turn. So the French convoy is inverted to a U-boat, and we're going to add that to the next calendar turn, so that will become available in late 1940, turn 3, and we'll put that on the turn track. And finally, we're going to flip the British Chamberlain's leader to its more useful Churchill side. Now Churchill becomes active, and he has many things that he can do to help us. Now, Germany still has 2 attacks remaining on the Western Front, so they're going to deploy their most powerful units from the force pool for the Western Front, and that's going to be a Bf-109 with a 5 strength and a Junkers 88 bomber with a 4 strength. That's going to use up the remaining 2 attacks they have there, and that is the situation on the Western Front. And now the Italian front is open in the Mediterranean. So you have one attack on front C, and that's going to place the highest strength unit from the force pool, and that is going to be the Africa Corps. And now we're going to move on to our economic warfare phase. We're going to place our convoys and we're going to roll for the U-boat. We have 3 convoys available to us. Since there's only one U-boat out, we don't have to worry about any of our convoys being sunk. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to place the British convoy in the 4 box, and we'll place the Norwegian convoy in the 3 box, and the US convoy will place in the North Sea. All right. And now we'll make our U-boat roll using the 1 column. Roll is a 6, and that means the U-boat is going to deploy to Zone 4. All right, so we're going to earn our economic haul now. 4 is lost, but we're going to gain 2 and 3. That's a total of 5. So we'll have $5 million added to the track. That'll boost us up to 6. So we'll move our millions of dollars up from 1 up to 6. That's good. One thing I forgot about is when we turned that chit over, it was a red disc in the middle. That means that Stalin should be refreshed. So he'll be going from his used side to his available side. So Stalin is actually available for us. Now we have Churchill available as well, and that is the next portion of the steps. We can use Churchill and Stalin. Churchill is a very flexible unit for us, and we can use him to make raids for us. He's going to succeed on a roll of 2, 3, 4, or 5, and he'll fail on a roll of 1 or 6. 6 is a fiasco. Not only is the action not successful, but the Churchill token will be placed 6 turns down the track. So we'll see what Churchill can do. He can launch a commando raid selecting any army, panzer, or siege on the globe. And if he succeeds, he would remove or flip the target. He can do a raid on Saint-Nazaire, which can target any German U-boat. And if it's successful, the U-boat is placed on the calendar track that number of turns in the future. He can sink the Bismarck, targeting a German or Argentine surface raider. Caucasus diplomacy. Those are his actions that he has available to him. And I think we're going to use Churchill on a commando raid. I'm going to target the Africa Corps and the Mediterranean front. So he will succeed on a roll of anything except 1 or 6. Let's see how we do. And here's the Churchill commando raid. The result is a 1, so we have failed. Churchill is going to go to the turn track 1 turn in advance, so it was a failure, but not the worst. Next, we have to decide if we want to use Stalin, and I think we're going to keep him in reserve. Our next choice is the Lend-Lease tokens. Next turn is going to be the 1940 election, so I don't know if we want to use those at this point. I think we will pass. I would like to use the Jeeps and trucks. That would get us $3 million. But I think the risk to Roosevelt would be too great, so we'll pass on that. Next step is the United Nations attack phase. And we can make some attacks against Axis armies. Now we have a problem in the Mediterranean front. We've got this support unit here that is going to be at a -1 modifier to any attacks that we make on front C or on E. So I think we're going to have to try to deal with that. Unfortunately, that is a tough unit to get rid of, and that's pretty nasty. So I think we'll try to deal with the Madagascar and Syrian armies and this Italian army in East Africa. I think we'll begin with an attack on this Vichy army in the Near East, the Syrian army. So we'll spend $1 million and try to get rid of that before it can become a problem for us. We need a 3 or better. And we've done it. So the Vichy army is removed from play. And I think we'll do the same thing for the army in Madagascar. Those have pretty nasty dice roll modifiers to us. So we'll spend another $1 million, putting us down to 4. And we'll attempt to get rid of that Madagascar army. And we have failed. All right, I'll spend another $1 million on that. Down to 3 million. And we've done it. The Madagascar army is removed. It leaves us with $3 million, and we're still looking at this Italian East African army. We need a 5 or 6 to try to get rid of that, and I think we'll do it. We'll spend $1 million, putting us down to 2, and we'll attempt to get rid of that Italian army. And we failed. All right. I think we'll spend $1 more million, and we'll try another roll. And we failed. We're down to $1 million. I'm going to keep that in reserve, I believe. And we're still looking at some -1 dice roll modifier to fronts C and E because of that. All right. And now we're going to move on to the industrial phase. We're going to be skipping the phases G and H, that's the turning the tide, and Pacific naval phase. That'll be skipped until that fronts are active. During the industrial phase, we can purchase some units, but unfortunately we've only got $1 million left. And I pretty much have to keep that in reserve. So that will move us on to the turn end phase. Allied banking will leave us with $1 million. Our naval reset will occur. All of our convoys will move back to available convoys box, as the German U-boat marker will also move back. And that's going to complete turn 2. We'll move on to turn 3. All right, we're going to be drawing our final green token. And that is revealed to be token number 1. There'll be 3 attacks on front A, and we also have a special action dealing with South Africa. So we know that Barbarossa will take place in early 1941 with Hitler's orders. Our first step is to deploy units from the calendar box. So we have the Churchill and a U-boat available. So those will be going into the U-boat box, and Churchill will return to the Allied leadership box. And we'll see if there's any calendar events, and there is. It's the U.S. election and victory at sea, number 3. First up is resolving the 1940 U.S. election. Roll a die. The roll is higher than the position of the Roosevelt tile. On the omnibus track, President loses re-election. Flip him to his Wilkie side. All right, currently the Roosevelt token is on 4, so only on a result of 5 or 6 will he lose the 1940 election. Here's the roll. We rolled a 2, so Roosevelt is elected. The other calendar event is the victory at sea, number 3. And that says, move 1 U-boat from the counter tray to the U-boat box. That's going to give Germany 3 U-boats. So we'll be adding a 3rd U-boat to the U-boats box. That's going to make our life very rough, and this would be the happy time for the U-boat commanders. And that reads, if the turn chit has South Africa's flag on it, chit number 1, roll a die. On a 6, its racist government pulls South Africa out of the war against Hitler. Flip the South Africa tile to its neutral side. Otherwise, Jan Christian Smuts preserves South Africa's alliance with Britain, and there is no game effect. Here is the roll. Roll is a 4, so we are okay. Jan Christian Smuts maintains his alliance. Next up is the Evening Telegraph phase. We'll roll the die and add 3 for the current turn number. Result is a 4, and that's 7. So we are on the 7 column, and we'll read off what we get. We have military events for Wavell, political events in Xinjiang, and no commandos. So let's see what's happening with those things. Well, on the military events display, we'll place the military events marker on the Wavell box, and that says +1 DRM to all attacks against Italian armies, which is great. And that also applies to an attack on the AOI, which is in Italian East Africa. That's great. And the Xinjiang event, will flip that from pro-USSR to pro-Japan. All right. Next up is the Axis powers attack phase. We're going to have to resolve 3 attacks on the Western Front, and this is going to represent the Battle of Britain. So we're going to move in. They're going to spend 2 attacks, and they'll be moving in their Dornier 17 and their Heinkel 111, and their 3rd attack is going to be the Blitz. This is the Blitz on London. And that reads, possible defeat. If a front contains 5 Axis armies and the game puts a 6th army into that front, put its Blitz tile there instead. Then check for an immediate UN defeat that may finish off the game. All right. It reads, the appearance of a Blitz means that your lines on that front have collapsed and the Axis are surging through, unless you can stop them immediately. We're going to roll 2 dice with no dice roll modifiers, and if the total is higher than the number of cities in the high morale box, the defeat succeeds. All right. So we have a total of 11 cities in high morale. So if the Axis can roll 12, they're going to win the game. In 1940, with the attack on Britain, I guess Britain would have collapsed at that point. Okay, we'll make the roll. 1 in 36 chance. Result is a 4, so that's no problem. In this case, the defeat fizzled, so we're going to remove the Blitz tile back to its reserves. So we still have 5 Axis armies or air groups that are a threat to us. We have to move 1 appropriate city from high morale to the low morale box, but we'll gain an immediate UN attack on that front free of charge. So I guess we will move the Glasgow city to low morale. And we're going to get a free attack on front A, and I guess we will target the Dornier 17. So we're looking for a result of 3 or better. And we failed. So 5 armies remain on the Western Front, or 5 air groups, I should say. The rulebook reads, if the defeat fizzles, you avoided defeat this time, but the costs it took to avert it plunged cities into unrest. Your people are losing faith in your ability to win the war. All right. Now we're going to move on to our economic warfare phase, and we're going to be able to place our convoys. Now, unfortunately, there are 3 U-boats in the U-boat box, so they have a chance to actually sink our convoys at this point. So with 3 U-boats, our danger rolls will be 7, 8, 9, and 11 and 12. So we're going to use a little strategy here, and hopefully we can outwit these U-boats without taking any damage. And I think we're going to place our convoys in the 2B box, the 2C box, and the 1B box. I'm going to take a safe approach to this. We're going to make a 2d6 roll, and we'll deploy our U-boats now using the 3 U-boat column. Result is 11, And that means that 2 U-boats are going to deploy to the 3 box. And 1 is going to deploy to the 4 box. So we're going to gain all of our convoy money. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got pretty lucky there and we didn't lose any convoys. So our millions of dollars will move up from 1 back up to 6. All right. Now we have the option of using Churchill and Stalin. And I think we're going to use Churchill to try to get rid of this AOI army in Italian East Africa. I think that would be a good use for him. Roll a die and he's going to succeed on a 2 through 5. Here is the roll. The result is a 2. So we've gotten rid of that nasty Italian East African army, which is great. And Churchill's going to go on the turn track 2 turns in advance. So he will reappear on turn 5. And now that the November 1940 election has occurred, we can kind of freely use our Lend-Lease tokens. And I'm going to use the Jeeps and Trucks token. It's going to give us a total of $3 million to our track, moving us up to $9 million. And we'll place that on the use tiles. Actually, that token is flipped and it is turned over to the number 2 side, which is aid to Russia. And now we can make our UN attacks on the board. We need to clear some of these theaters out, in particular the Western Front that's within 1 of being another blitz. So I think we'll focus some of our UN attacks there. And we'll start out by spending $1 million and making an attack on that Dorner 17. Result is a 5. That's going to go back to the display. That's great. And I think we'll launch another attack there and we'll target the Heinkel 111. That has a 3 value. And we failed. We'll try one more attack there. And we failed again. Try one more. And we failed. That is not good. Well, I think we're going to switch to the Mediterranean front and we'll target the Coal Army. It's a little easier. That's a 2. And we've managed to put that back on the display. That's great. All right. Well, we know with Barbarossa coming, there's going to be 2 attacks on the Mediterranean front and 1 on the Western front. We have a total of $4 million remaining. And I think we will target that Mediterranean front again. We'll try attacking the 10th Army. Move our money down to 3. That has a value of 3. And we're successful, so the 10th Army goes back to the display. All right, now we have to decide about the Western Front again. I think I'll make another attack there just to keep that in control. We'll move us down to 2. We'll target the Heinkel 111. We're looking for a 4 or greater. And we failed. That is really tough for us. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. We brought them down a little bit, and that which should prevent another blitz there at least. Now, we do have some funds left in our U.S. aid to China, so I think I'm going to spend those on trying to flip that pro-Japan marker in Xinjiang. So we will move that down 1 and make an attack there. We need 3 or greater. And it's a cocked die, but that is a 3. So we flip that back. That's good. And I think we'll use our last aid to China and attempt to get rid of that CCAA army. We need a 4 or greater. And we've done it. So that army is put back to the force display in Army D. And now we'll move on to our industrial phase. And we have $2 million remaining. And I think what we'll do is, let's consult our Evening Telegraph here and see what we're looking at. This is going to be turn 4, so we'll be looking at anything between 5 and 10 as possible results. That would involve basically Italy, Iraq, Syria, and Xinjiang. So we've kind of dealt with those areas pretty well. So I think we're in pretty good shape regarding any possible events that might be occurring in the next turn. We know that that's going to be Barbarossa. And I think the best thing we can do is to probably reinforce Malta. I don't want to wait any longer on that, so I think we will do that. It's going to cost us our last $2 million, and we'll be able to flip Malta from besieged to fully reinforced Malta. All right. And we'll move on now to the end phase. We have nothing left in our bank account, and we'll do our naval reset. So all these U-boats are going to come back, but our convoys will also return. And now it is going to be the start of turn 4, which is early 1941, and we're going to have Operation Barbarossa. It is now early 1941, and Hitler will authorize Operation Barbarossa, the largest land invasion in history. So instead of playing a normal token, we're going to be using the Operation Barbarossa token, and that is going to authorize 1 attack on the Western Front, 7 attacks on the Eastern Front, and 2 attacks on the Mediterranean Front. The Soviets are now at war with Germany, so we'll move the Soviet policy to war versus Germany. And we'll take a look at our calendar events, and we have Hitler's orders, as we've seen. We also have Victory at Sea number 4, and we'll see what that is. Victory at Sea number 4 is not good for us. Put the German Bismarck Raider in the U-boat box. That is not good. So the Kriegsmarine is deploying its super battleship, the Bismarck. And we're going to have to try to hunt that thing down as soon as we can. Now, we don't have Churchill available. Normally, the use of Churchill in hunting down the Bismarck is very effective, but he will not be available until next turn. Next up is our Evening Telegraph. It's turn 4, so we'll be adding 4 to the result of the die. We rolled a 2, that's modified to a 6, and that will be our row that we'll be using, and we're going to have Quislings. It's going to list an extra attack for the Axis on Front B. We'll begin with the Western Front. There's 1 attack there, and the Germans will deploy a Dorner 17, that giving them 5 armies. 1 more would put it into a blitz situation. So the Axis will have 7 attacks on Front B, and they're going to gain an extra 1 because of the Quislings. We're going to move to the Axis attack phase. Now we have distractions here. We have the Yugoslavian army and eventually the Greek army. Unfortunately, we have no money available to support them. So the Germans will use 1 of their attacks, and Yugoslavia will fall. A second attack is going to remove the Greek army, and Greece will fall. And we will place the Greek surrender token in the box. Next, Germans will use 4 attacks, and they're going to place 4 armies. Army Group South, Army Group Center, Army Group North, and the Romanian Army. Those will be placed on the Eastern Front. They will launch another attack, and that is going to deploy the Blitz token to the Eastern Front. Now we have to resolve the Blitz. We have a total of 10 cities in high morale. Roll is a 7. So the Blitz will fizzle. So we will remove the Blitz token. That goes back to the box. And we're going to have to move one of our high morale cities to a low morale city. And I'm going to select Baku. So we'll move that to the low morale area. The Allies are going to gain a free attack on the Eastern Front. So we'll make a die roll and we're going to attack the Romanian army. We need a 3 or greater. And we failed. Germany is going to have one more attack now on the Eastern Front. They're going to spend that. That is going to place the Blitz token once again to the Eastern Front. We're going to move the Leningrad city from high morale to low morale. And now we're going to get another free attack on the Eastern Front. The Blitz token will be removed back. We'll make another attack, selecting the Romanian army as our target. The roll is a 2, and that is a failure. So the Germans are doing quite well on their Operation Barbarossa. That will conclude all of the attacks on the Eastern Front, and Germany is now going to deploy their Panzer Army. Panzer Army must be attacked first before we attack any other armies that are available. Now we'll move on to the Mediterranean front. There's going to be 2 attacks on the Mediterranean front, and that's going to place 2 Italian armies on the Med front. They're going to place the 10th Army and the 5th Army. And now we're going to move on to our economic warfare phase. Germany has not only the surface raider Bismarck, but also 3 U-boats. So examining the 4 U-boats column, we're going to have to be very careful where we place these convoys. We don't want them to be sunk. So it looks like 2A, 4, and 3 are the potential areas where U-boats will be sunk. So we're going to avoid those. And I think what we'll do is we're going to place a convoy in 2B, U.S. convoy in 2C, and a British convoy in 1A. Now we're going to make the roll on the German U-boats table using the 4 column. The result is a 2. That means they're going to be placing U-boats and surface raiders in number 3, in 2B, in 1A, oh boy, and finally in 1B. So none of our convoys are sunk, but the Germans have managed to stop us from gaining economic transfers. So it looks like the only money we're going to be getting is 2 points from our 2C convoy. We'll move up our millions of dollars to the $2 million mark. That was not good for us. Now we can decide if we're going to use Churchill or Stalin. Churchill is on the turn track. He will come back next turn, but Stalin is available, and we're going to use one of his very powerful abilities, and that's the Great Patriotic War. If Front B is active, you can use Stalin to move one face-up Soviet city from low morale to the high morale box, but you must flip that city permanently face down to its white sky yellow bumper sticker. So we are going to employ Comrade Stalin, and he's going to use his Great Patriotic War ability. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to move Leningrad back to high morale, and then that's going to get flipped to its opposite side, and that can never be moved back. Once it goes to low morale, it can never be put back to high. So the city of Gorky becomes active now. It's a good use for Stalin, and that has pretty much reduced our low morale down to just 2 now. That's great. And now we can decide to use our Lend-Lease tokens, and since the 1940 election has concluded, we can use these without any problems. And I think we're going to use the Aid to Russia. That is going to give us 4 points to the cannon meat, the Soviet cannon meat marker. And that will increase the Soviet cannon meat from 8 up to 12, and we're going to make good use of those Soviet conscripts. And we're going to begin now our UN attack phase, and we'll start out by spending a Soviet cannon meat. We're going to throw the Soviet conscript army against the German panzers, and we have to attack that first before we can go after any other target in the Eastern Front. So we're going to need a 5 or 6 on this. And here's the first roll. And we are successful. That is going to send the Panzer Army back to the display, and we can continue with our attacks. And I'm going to use another Soviet cannon meat to attack the Romanian army. That is a success. The Romanians are put back to the display. We'll continue on with another cannon meat attack, moving that down to 9, and we're going to target the Army Group North. The result is a 4. That is successful. So we'll move Army Group North to the display. I think we're going to continue with the Soviet cannon meat, and we're going to attempt to go after Army Group South. We'll move cannon meat down to 8, and we need a 5 or 6 on this. We failed. I'm going to spend another one targeting Army Group South. And that time we're successful. Army Group South is returned to the force display. All that remains is Army Group Center. We have 7 cannon meat available, and for right now, I think we'll leave it at that. Western allies have $2 million in the treasury, and I think we're going to use those on the Western Front. We're going to spend one of our $2 million, and we're going to target the Dorner 17. We need a 3 or greater. And we've done it. Dorner 17 is returned to A on the Western Front. That leaves us with $1 million in the treasury, and I think we're going to have to preserve that for future use. We would move on now to the industrial phase, but again, we only have 1 million left, and I want to keep that in reserve. So I think what we'll do is move on to the turn end phase. Allied banking will be $1 million. We'll do our naval reset. So the Bismarck will return to the U-boats box along with the other 3 U-boats. That's a definite problem in the battle for the Atlantic. Our convoys will return. Thank goodness we didn't lose those. And that is going to bring the turn to a close. And I think we're going to bring this video to a close as well. We've played through 4 turns, including the Operation Barbarossa. Next turn is going to be the Pearl Harbor attack, and I think we're going to cover that in the next video. So far, I'm having a blast with this game, and I hope that the viewers are also enjoying this, and I would invite you to return back to the Solo Gamers Club for the next video, which will feature turn 5. That'll be late 1941, and we're going to play through the Pearl Harbor attack. Thanks so much for watching, and I appreciate your views and likes. And again, I invite you back to the channel for our next video, which will be covering global war. Thanks for watching, and I hope everyone has a pleasant evening and a good night.